Okay, in this video, what I'm going to talk about is the two things that everybody needs in order to optimize their health and fitness. Two things. Now, can you guess what they are? A lot of times people start thinking about, whether it's their nutrition or the exercise program, but it's as simple as this. We need a systematic approach, or we need a plan, right? So the systematic approach or the plan is the roadmap that's going to get you there. But the other thing you need is discipline. And for a lot of people, they generally struggle with one of those. Either they lack the discipline, they have a tough time following through with the program, or they're following some cookie cutter program that maybe worked for a friend or family member. But, the one thing about each of us is we are as unique as our thumbprints, right? So the variables are very different. What will work for me isn't necessarily going to work for you, but what will always work for everybody is foundational or fundamental elements when it comes to health and fitness. So just remember this, methods are many, principles are few. We got to stick to good, sound, structured fundamentals. And what we're going to talk about today is why most people stay stuck and why they don't tend to move the needle for optimal health and fitness. So I'm going to just share my screen. We're going to go through kind of some of these key elements. And I just want to really impress upon everybody that the key to optimal health and fitness is to embrace good, sound fundamentals. Fundamentals, again, I've talked about this before, they're not always sexy, but they work. And so we have to make sure we're building a strong foundation. So as I share my screen, I'm going to go through all these different elements that uh, an individual needs to really have in order to ensure they're getting the very best results. So most people attack symptoms, fix my back, lower blood sugar, lose weight, more energy. But these are just reflections that our body's out of balance. So we want to make sure that we are focusing more on the balance and realigning organs, glands, systems, or muscles because symptoms are often the dashboard lights. It's the check engine light coming on. It's not really the root cause. And so, in order to ensure we get long-term results, we have to get to the root cause. So, when you improve balance and flow, if you want to make health really simple, it boils down to two things, and that's balance and flow. So, when we get out of balance, bad things happen. Why? Because the body is designed to work best in harmony, in what is known as homeostasis. So the further we get away from balance or homeostasis, then the greater the symptoms that will mount. And in conventional medicine, what do? We gravitate towards symptom suppression, right? So we're going to take a drug, we're maybe going to inject, or downstream, maybe a little bit further, surgical intervention, right? So the first signal that check engine light comes on, it's you don't want to put duct tape on the check engine light, and that's exactly what you're doing when you're suppressing the symptom. The symptom is the gift. And actually, I talk about that in my book, how the symptom is the gift. And the reason it's the gift is because it's giving your body a signal that something's out of balance. And if we can catch this upstream, the symptoms aren't quite as severe. It's generally the more and more we get out of balance, the more severe the symptoms that will actually manifest along the way. So everyone needs to ensure good health by having the balance and flow. So we think about blood sugar. If it's too high, bad things happen. If blood sugar gets too low, bad things happen. Blood pressure too high, bad things happen. Blood pressure too low, bad things happen. Body temperature, pH balance, cholesterol, everything is predicated on a specific harmony and balance. So Another thing we have to think about is we want to ensure that we keep systemic inflammation or overall body inflammation low. Inflammation is really one of the number one enemies for optimal health. We have to make sure that we keep systemic inflammation in our body low. We also, in terms of joint pain, if you have any kind of joint pain, usually there's a couple of different variables. Typically, unless there's been trauma to the joint, it really boils down to muscles that surround the joint that become under stress. Certain muscles get too tight, and then other muscles get too weak. So we have to make sure that we have harmony and balance with the musculature. We want to make sure our breathing is efficient. We should have a balance between oxygen and carbon dioxide. There's a very specific ratio we want to be in. If we are over breathing, meaning we're taking in all this oxygen and not blowing off our CO2, our carbon dioxide, what happens is you become more and more sensitive to carbon dioxide. So you go through this perpetual cycle of always breathing in, but we need the balance between oxygen and carbon dioxide. So the body, when we talk about the principles of balance, these are the right relationships and whatever you're talking about, whether you're talking about orthopedic health, your joint health, muscle balance, or your biochemistry. It's all about ratios and balance here. And when it comes to timing, timing can be the timing of when you're controlling circadian rhythms, like when you're going to sleep, when you're getting up, the type of exercise and when you're doing that. All of these things can play a role. And so that's where the systematic approach of the plan comes into place. Now, this isn't really about being perfect. It's more, again, not a perfect symmetry, but a point of balance. So the body's always changing. But your physiology never stays the same. It's either moving in a positive direction or it's moving in a negative direction in terms of optimal health. So we want to make sure that we don't get into extremes. That's when symptoms are really going to rear their ugly head. Balance in the nervous system. So here's where we talk about our go gear, our fight or flight. That's the stress response. And that's where most people are living, particularly today with craziness going on in the world, foods not being as nutrient packed, more toxicity in the environment, more toxicity in our food, our air, our water. These are all things that can put us in that excessive stress mode. And then we have the restore gear, which is our parasympathetic nervous system. So we have our sympathetic, which is fight or flight, parasympathetic, rest and digest. That's where our body heals. The body's not going to heal in fight or flight. So how do we really optimize fight or our nervous system tone? Talk about it all the time, but one of the most important things is breathing. And if we are breathing in a very controlled manner, and we are actually getting more of a horizontal breath rather than we want to slow our breath rate. We want to fill more expansively the diaphragm. We want to originate our breathing from our diaphragm. And so when we do those things, then we start to facilitate better sleep, less emotional stress in our life, a greater capacity for dealing with stress in our life. And another thing too, it's also going to facilitate restful sleep, optimal digestion. So those are the kind of the key elements around having a healthy nervous system, or a nervous system that knows when to go and when to restore. So getting back to the fight or flight, or that sympathetic tone, too much sympathetic tone, Then what happens is you're going to have a tendency to have more cravings. Your sleep quality is going to drop. Pain sensitivity is going to increase. So it inflames your joints. So sometimes it's what you're eating, and then sometimes it's what's eating you that causes inflammation or stress in the body. Digestion is really affected. And then fat loss gets harder. So you have a more difficult time losing weight. And that's where sometimes people really get frustrated is what happens is they try and beat the weight out of themselves. And sometimes you have to nourish your body so your body can safely release, right? Release the weight because many times your body will hold on to excess body fat as a protective mechanism because you're too acidic. And your body will just say, well, we're going to hold on to this fat to buffer the acids. So this is why it's so important to make sure that we lead with our health. And a byproduct of that is you would lose weight. So another thing is in terms of our biochemistry is blood sugar balance. Again, we talked about too high or too low, bad things are going to happen. But if we get too high and too low, that's where we can get fatigues, cravings, storage of body fat around the belly, mood shifts, insulin sensitivity. So where you store your body fat tells a story of the function of particular organs or glands. So based on when I'm looking at someone and I'm evaluating someone, I can generally tell just by visually looking at them a number of factors that they can improve to optimize currently how they look, how they feel, how they perform. I'm looking at posture, looking at how someone's breathing. And then another thing too is you can see skin tone. There's all these things, body fat storage sites. So where you store your body fat has a direct correlation between the function of an organ or a gland, right? So we'll talk about more, we'll get more into that subject on another video, but again, where you store your body fat has a direct correlation between a specific gland or organ function. And then stress chemistry. Chronic stress shifts your body towards storage and protection. So again, we want to calm the nervous system, and we do that by specific timing with our foods. We can also do that through gentle intermittent fasting. And then again, talk about this all the time, but breathing. Breathing is such a critical component that everyone needs to understand and master if they want to truly have better health. And then balance in the organs and glands, what's driving the car. So thyroid. So if you, and this is really going to control metabolic functionality. So it's going to control your metabolic tempo, body temperature regulation. But then also if you store your body fat all throughout your body pretty proportionately, it's a good indication that you probably have some sort of thyroid stress. People that store more body fat around the belly, that's high cortisol. Or on the love handle area, it would be more like insulin sensitivity. So again, your body is constantly giving you signals. Liver processing, detox load, blood sugar buffering. If you've got liver stress, then and your liver is maybe not filtering the way it's supposed to because maybe you've got nutritional deficiencies or you've got too much toxicity, then you're going to have a greater propensity for storage of body fat around the hips and thighs. And then the gut, that's really going to dictate how you absorb your nutrients. So sometimes you can eat the right foods, but if you're not digesting it, then we can have problems. And then we can have a delayed immune response. So we can it's not a food allergy, but a food intolerance. And that's when we can have skin issues and chronic fatigue and a tough time losing weight, and we can actually have things like depression because of the gut-brain axis. We have to take a look at that. And then the pancreas, again, I talked about if you have kind of more body fat storage in the love handle area, that's when you're looking at your pancreas or blood sugar regulation issues. And then if we have more belly fat around the middle or midsection, there's your adrenals. The HPA axis stands for the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And basically that's just a loop communicating from your hypothalamus, your master regulator, to your pituitary and your adrenals. And if people have a tough time losing weight, they generally are getting poor communication with that signaling. So hopefully, what I talked about today makes sense in terms of harmony and balance. Remember, bad things are always going to happen, and nobody can refute this. It doesn't matter if you're talking about holistic health or conventional medicine. Nobody will ever refute if we have a blockage of any kind, bad things happen. Blockage of blood flow, nerve flow, lymph flow. If we have a blockage of any kind, bad things are going to happen. Eastern philosophies, holistic health, you might hear things like life force, chi, or prana. But at the quantum level, it's pure energy. It's a blockage of some sort. And then the other thing is balance. So we want flow and we want balance. If you want help with any of this, you need some coaching really to help with either a systematic approach, a plan, or discipline with that plan. Maybe you're interested in losing some extra weight, sleeping better, more energy. Click on the link and go ahead and set up a complimentary session. We can identify exactly maybe where your struggles are, your challenges, and then figure out how to course correct those things, come up with a game plan, and a person's always going to do better with a plan. And then if you struggle with maybe, following through with plans, we've got a lot of great strategies there too as well. So anyway, hopefully this makes sense. And if you have any questions, again, go ahead and click on that link for a complimentary session. We would love the opportunity to help you really zero in and help you obtain your goals in 2026. So until we see you in the next video, go out and make it a great day. You certainly do deserve it.